Welcome to the show. Today I'm drinking, Monster Ultra Vice Guava. I've been saving this one because I tried it. I don't remember. I tried it a while ago, but I couldn't remember if I liked it or not. And you said you liked it, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try it again.
It's pretty good. They had it by the video games in Walmart, and
that's subtle. I like it.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's
not super crazy, but it's subtle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Courtney, you were one to hop right into a conspiracy theory. What you got?
Well, I mean, it was because you guys were like, well, at least Tanner was like, yeah, they don't want to hear us talk about, like, complaining about being sick. But Phil and I, like, you and I were talking about how much we've been sick lately. Yeah. You said over the last year, but I kind of have a little halfway formed conspiracy theory of my own that, like, the number of sicknesses that get passed around since COVID is ridiculous. Yeah. And it's like everyone's immune systems are just Swiss cheese. And so I feel that.
Well, and everything has to be named a separate thing too now, right? Like everything was just the flu before that. Or
just a cold or a bug. Yeah.
It's a stomach bug.
And I don't know how to differentiate. I'm just like, this is how, except I'm very certain that I had COVID. Mm-hmm. And then we think norovirus, because then we went right into a stomach bug. So fun stuff. But anyways, that kind of stuff, that's the first time in my recollection that I've had two things back to back like that.
Yeah.
You know, and so kind of makes you wonder.
I missed, I think, 4 days of work for sickness this last year, which is like, I don't think I've ever missed that many in a year for being sick. And that was all within like a 3-month span.
I think in the 11 years I've done Chi Alpha, I've taken 1 day off for being sick. I don't get sick a whole lot.
I don't usually either. That's why it's weird to me.
Right. I like legit for the last, it's been since we got married. You can attest to it. Yeah, I don't really get sick, but when I do, because I'm a little baby about it, because I'm not used to it, like, it jacks me up.
Except when it's on a ministry night, and I'm like, and then that one time I was like, I'm forcing you to stay home. Yeah. We will figure it out, and you need to stay at home and pray that you rejoin the land of the living soon.
Yeah. I don't remember what that was.
I don't even remember, but I remember it was bad.
Yeah. I guess I take that back. There was a week where we had to take off during the 2020 cycle of the
Modelo virus?
You were talking about.
Yeah. Modelo virus?
But it's just like talking about the flu now. Really, it shouldn't be being flagged anymore.
It's actually one of the most flagged. When you mention it, you are more likely to get your episode shadow banned because of it still to this day.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's even big enough that even like on TikTok, they straight up, even on TikTok, they won't mention the word because it'll get flagged. But yeah, we've been talking about being sick for like 10 minutes already anyway.
Yeah. I guess it was a really good conspiracy theory that I had to mention.
I guess.
That's fine, though.
Segue episode introduction.
In the ancient days of giants, when the earth was wild and free, a creature roamed the valleys, cloaked in mystery. Is he born of angels' blood and man, a Nephilim so tall? Or a shadow of the fallen, yet heeding the Maker's call. He's a biblically accurate Bigfoot, with a lineage from the skies. Not a myth or legend, but a truth that never dies. Is he a remnant of the Nephilim, a titan standing tall? Or does he have the word of God upon him, the last to hear the call?
Main thing of this episode is going to be kind of talking about some of the stuff that we've talked about before and some of the new information / updated information that we've garnered.
Thank you.
In recent weeks.
Thank you, Phil. Or should I say Bill, since our son has been calling you Bill?
Yeah, my father-in-law loved that.
I think it's really cute.
It is pretty cute.
I love it.
It's adorable.
I love
the whole
it so
time at
much.
conference, anytime you see, hi, Bill.
Hi, Bill. Where's Bill?
Adorable.
It's so cute.
It was great. That made me so happy. That was the highlight of my security gig that I did.
It was pretty great.
Yeah.
Considering both he and I were sick the whole time, that was one of my highlights too. Like just when we actually made it out of the hotel room for that conference.
Yeah.
Anyways, talking about sickness again. Sorry, but yeah, no, we have a few.
You're taking it personally
updates.
that I don't think people want to hear about us complaining about being sick.
Bigfoot.
I have some updates. So yeah, we had a few things that we just wanted to sling in, and stuff that were either loose ends or corrections from previous episodes or updates. And so I had a little bit of a list going, and I thought we could just start the episode out real quick and just kind of, if anyone was wondering, or if they were like pretty much anyone else besides me and they've completely forgotten about everything already,
right?
And they're probably not interested, but let's bring it up again anyways. So back when we were talking about like demonic activity, that kind of stuff, I mentioned that there was a movie that I couldn't remember any of the details of, and I couldn't remember who was in it, but I felt like it was Robert De Niro, and in it there was like a girl and some creepy pictures and something about a forest, but I remembered that there was like some shady stuff that would go down, and he would always wake up at 3:06 in the morning. You remember? Mm-hmm. And that's when we launched into talking about the witching hour, that kind of stuff, and then my personal experiences in college for a few months span, I was waking up at like 3:06 exactly. Like every single night for a while, and it was kind of creepy. So anyways, found out what the movie was. So it is Hide and Seek. It was a 2005 movie with Robert De Niro. So I was right, because you guys were like, nice. Robert De Niro in a horror movie, and I was like, I know what I'm talking about. And Dakota Fanning. So Dakota Fanning was actually the little girl that I was thinking of.
She's creepy.
Yeah, she is creepy.
Yeah.
I
have never even seen anything about that movie. I have no idea.
Yeah, it was I don't even remember, but I remember it was just like that stuck out to me, the 3:06, because it happens so many times in the movie, and then all of a sudden I started waking up at the same time, and I'm like, great, cool. So yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I don't remember watching the movie. I don't even remember anything about that movie, to be honest.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know if I want to watch it either.
I don't know. You know what? With baby coming soon, I'm probably going to be waking up at 3:06 anyway. So
yeah,
I'm just going to be like,
I hate when
baby crying. But
I hate when media that has that kind of vibe to it starts to affect your psyche.
Yeah.
And you see it in life. I hate that. That's so awful. It's such a weird. I hate bad feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then
nice memory though. That's pretty good.
I
That's
mean,
a good poll.
that one was bugging me for a while, because I'm like, I know it was Robert De Niro. I knew he was in something. But
that's a deep cut. I had no idea that movie even existed.
Dude, I don't even remember how good it was or not. I just remembered like parts of it freaked the crap out of me back in 2005. So anyways, the second thing I had is a product of our Discord chat, and this one actually just happened recently. I don't think we're shouting out specific names, but
no, he knows who he is.
Yeah, you know who you are. You're a regular commenter in our Discord. I do my best to keep up, but anyways, yeah, he called it out, and he was like, "Hey, so here's a picture." So in reference to your Appalachia episode, when it was actually me, Courtney, who was talking about it, when I was researching and watching a lot of Skinwalker videos, and a lot of the videos, the Skinwalkers had eye shine, and we went into this thing about how like humans don't produce eye shine. But anyways, he commented, and he's like, "Hey, so here's a screenshot from my baby monitor. Here's my child, and currently in his or her room, and through the baby monitor, my child has eye shine in the darkness." And I was like, oh, that's totally right. And I saw that message, and right then I had just switched over from our kid's baby monitor, because he was napping at the time. And I was like, yeah, he does have some eye shine. So yeah, I slung out that fact thinking that like humans don't have eye shine, which I don't know if
do they not have eye shine with flashlights or something like that? That's what I'm wondering.
And so maybe I should have looked into that a little bit more.
Because I feel like we looked at it live, like while we were recording. I feel like
Phil looked it up. But sometimes, a lot of times lately, it has like the AI summary at the top.
Yeah.
And it could have just been like, let me slosh something together And
Right.
yeah, this.
My
So
bad if I
No,
if I
that's okay.
Well, no, let me caveat that. My bad if I misinform, but that's why we say do your own research.
Yes.
Look
Right.
things up,
Yes.
verify.
well, and we're learning
But I-
right alongside of you guys too.
Yeah.
So
I do think it is. I think it is that humans don't have flashlight eye shine.
There's something different
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
like
It's not the same
flashlight
as
and
other-
headlights. Because like deer and like
Yeah.
critters and rodents and stuff,
That their
it
eyes.
shows up.
I think it was
Yeah.
more. We were talking more about flashlights, but
So in
I think you're right
person-
that
so-
when we
so
Googled it,
I'm-
it just
I'm
lumped everything
wondering-
together into one.
if just today's cameras are high quality enough that it picks up more eye shine than just looking at it naturally. You know what I mean?
It could be
Because
Or if-
cameras pick up more detail than our eyes do at this point, right?
No.
Or at least they pick up different frequencies or something. Not frequencies, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the light is different, but they're, from what I understand, they're not even close to the amount of megapixels that our eyes pick up. Like it's not even
Oh, okay.
close yet.
Okay.
But the way that they view
I'm never going to
light-
speak up thinking I know a photography fact on this podcast ever again, despite me taking 2 classes on it. Just never mind.
But the way that I think the way they view light, because they can increase or decrease light differently, and so the way that they absorb light is different now. But yeah, I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong.
Interesting.
I mean, it seems like it's growing and increasing exponentially, so it's possible that they can.
Just
But
depends on the device. I don't know. And then the night vision on baby monitors, and then I wonder with trail cams if it's consistent. Is like a baby monitor about the same as like a trail cam?
yeah,
You know.
probably.
Probably pretty
So
close.
would human eye shine
'Cause
pick up on a trail cam?
A trail cam would be very similar to like our doorbell camera.
Yeah,
Just
that kind of stuff.
yeah, but it just would.
It's just how a lot of these anomalies get picked up these days.
Yeah,
Just cameras that are up, and yeah. But anyways,
yeah, and it would just be
just interesting.
solar charged basically.
But I do know for a fact that red eye that gets picked up in pictures is the light from the camera bouncing off the backs of your eyeballs.
Retinas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if you have one eye that has red eye and one that doesn't, you should go into an eye doctor because you might have eye cancer.
Wow. Well, you guys just have more interesting facts than me, so
I didn't have a fact there.
it's just
I didn't say no.
you
I,
supplied retinas. I was doubting
I just
the
gave
word.
a scientific term for
Well,
a part of an eye.
You did.
Well, that's not
Something
a
that
fact.
I didn't
it's just
have.
okay.
But
I'm
speaking
sorry.
of,
No, I'm not saying you have to be sorry. I'm saying I have to be sorry.
No, but I'm
'cause
sorry.
My energy and my brain activity is not up to snuff tonight. So
but speaking of the Discord, same guy, actually, he had sent me an email, and he was like, "Hey guys." Oh, I thought you were getting ready to sneeze.
What? No.
And so I was just like, for editing's sake, I was like, I'm going to not talk while you're sneezing. Because it's easier when you're editing if just one person is talking at a time. Because if you need to cut something, and so if you're going to sneeze, yeah, anyway.
are you going to cut that?
Most likely.
Oh.
But
So you
anyway.
did that to yourself.
Yep. The same person was emailing me, and he was like, "Hey, just so you know, I actually am friends with the son of the lady that we talked about that spoke at the Bigfoot conference and saw Bigfoot along I-80."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said, "I know for a fact because I like her son is like one of my really good friends that she saw Bigfoot, and then after the sighting got asked to speak at the conference and ended up not
Right.
even speaking because she didn't really like, it was one of those things where she was like, I don't really want to talk about this. I don't want to be known for talking about this.
Yeah.
And so she didn't even actually speak at that convention. So she saw Bigfoot, had the sighting, called it in, all that stuff, and she never even talked at the thing. So she was one of the headlining speakers, but she ended up backing out because she didn't want to be known for it.
Man,
so
if you
for
happen
me,
to
that
hear
adds
this, I
credibility.
apologize for not doing a little bit farther research to find out more about that. No, I don't know if I could have or not, but
I would
like,
say I did
didn't-
research
I
too.
certainly didn't mean to discredit simply because of that. It was a caveat that seemed worth noting based on the information I had at the time.
I don't even think you need to apologize, because we even specifically said, like, I think the one question I would have is, did she get asked to speak after she saw, or before, was she already headlining to speak?
That's what
that
I
was a
asked, I
question.
remember.
Huh?
That's what I asked. I remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I do think that would have been important to know, but we couldn't. It was like we didn't have the dates of when she got booked to headline or anything. We just, that's information we couldn't have had. And so I don't think
condensed article.
Yeah, I don't think we need to apologize. Because we put it out there, we didn't have all the information, but now we have more information, and we can kind of unequivocally say, like, that adds, in my mind, that adds a little bit to her credibility, because she's like, I saw this thing, because that's kind of where I'm at. Is like, if somebody asked me to come and be a headline speaker because I saw something I couldn't explain out at the state park, I'd be like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to talk about that. But if somebody asked me to come speak because I'm a podcast host, I'd be like, hey, yeah, buddy. And so I think that that adds credibility to the story.
Absolutely. Well, I think that kind of to me resembles the attitude of, like, those that saw Jesus after he rose from the dead, right? Because, like, there's no benefit. There's no benefit to avoiding that.
Yeah.
Right? You can only gain, fame, notoriety. You can only, like, become more well-known, give yourself a platform by talking about it. If you don't want to talk about it after having reported it, that it would be really weird to, like, fake that and then just be like, I don't want to talk about it. That would be really weird. It just kind of gives me that same vibe of, like, why would you do it that way if that was your goal?
Right. So you've been hearing about all of the fires going on. That's
God's wrath
weird
upon Hollywood. I don't necessarily believe that.
Well, there's the video.
I don't necessarily not believe that either.
So there's 8 different fires that were started.
I saw the time lapse of this.
And you brought up 3 of them started at the same time. Like, literally
the video I saw, the time lapse video that I saw showed 3 separate ones starting at the, like, exact same time.
And then so then right after that, all in all, I think they said there was 8 different fires. Some of, like, one of them was the size of, like, a couple city blocks. Like, it wasn't huge, but, like, and then outside of that there was 7, and there was a person who was apprehended by citizens allegedly. I'll add that all of this is allegedly, even though it's not, but it is. It's allegedly. But anyway, there was a group of citizens that stopped the dude on a bike who was riding around with a blowtorch. Just happened to be riding, and not like a...
That's almost as crazy as a mucked up suspect carrying his firearm and a bag with a whole bunch of incriminating evidence and a manifesto with him in a McDonald's.
Yeah.
In the, like,
weird.
Within a couple hours drive of where said was committed.
But yeah, so, like, they, like, I guess the citizens caught him in the act of trying to start one, and then they were, like, flogging him, basically, like, stop. And then they were calling the cops, and it wasn't
pause. You mean to tell me that Los Angeles residents intervened in a situation involving illegal activity voluntarily?
Yeah, because they don't have any cops. They all
why is that
defunded? But anyway, that's all I'll say about politics.
I refuse to believe.
But anyway,
they got tired of covering department stores.
For that, literally. But yeah, this wasn't like I don't know if you've ever had, like, a food torch or something smaller than that, like a small torch.
It's called a culinary torch.
A culinary torch? This was not a culinary torch. This was like an industrial, like, you're starting some fires, like maybe a welder.
Somewhere between like a torch lighter and a meth lighter and a flamethrower.
This thing
Burns-o-matic.
This thing was, like, full blown, and I'm gesturing with my hands how big the tank was on it.
Oh, so you're talking like mini oxygen tank.
Talking like an actual torch. Yeah, not like literally what I was, like, I'm trying to explain it. It's
so
like
not like
small
a Burns-o-matic.
fire hydrant.
Not like a Burns-o-matic, the blue, like,
fire extinguisher.
Full blown, dude. Yeah.
Wow.
So clearly this dude was starting some fires somehow, somewhere. Now, whether or not he was the one starting the fires, but then they also, I believe they said that they found a suspect that they believe started at least one of the fires. So they know for sure one of them was started by somebody. Yeah, just a lot of weird stuff. But then the ironic thing is that this is, Hunter
Burden's.
Burdenland's.
That's good.
The first resident's son, his house burnt down conveniently, and then quite a few of the celebrities that are allegedly on the poof diddlers list. Quite a few of their houses burned down
Poor Mel
conveniently.
Gibson, man. He didn't,
So
deserve-
there was
he didn't
probably
deserve to lose his.
some pizza evidence going on.
It might be. And then on top of that, the other coincidences are, one, this same area was alleged to be a smart city starting in 2028, just like the other previous places.
You know what
Another
else?
coincidence.
Oh, are you going to say it? I think you're going to say it. Go
I don't
ahead.
know. Go for it.
Remember where the next Olympics is going to be hosted?
Yeah, that's so they were complaining about not having land for the Olympics. Now they
Yeah.
got a lot of land for the
Are
Olympics.
you kidding me?
I mean,
And
come
then-
on. You could clean up the streets before. You've shown that. Yeah,
And
anyways.
yeah, but
if
then
it's-
you'd have to cut the homeless in half.
If
Oh
it's
my gosh.
not, if it's not there, no, they don't have that problem anymore because they got rid of them
Billion.
when they brought in the.
Hey, are you familiar with the joke I'm referencing?
No.
No.
I think I can't remember if it was the UK or who it was, but somebody said they wanted to cut the homeless population in half. What they meant was cut down the number of
Yeah.
homeless by half, but the way they worded it in their quote
Was like
sounded like they're
King Solomon with a baby.
yeah.
Gotcha.
That's terrible.
That was kind of a left field joke.
Yeah. But as you recall, they don't have that problem anymore because when we brought in the delegate from China,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah, everything's all cleaned
Yeah,
up
the
now, so they don't
streets
have
were
that problem.
Sparkling clean.
The other coincidence that it could have potentially been was they're slated to begin a new rail service. And when you look at the maps for the new rail services, it literally lines up almost identically to where each one of these burned areas are. And then the other
And
coincidence...
the people who lost homes, they're not really going to lose out on a ton because of insurance, right? Well, I mean, they don't have the fire insurance now.
They don't have insurance because a few
So,
months
like-
ago, the insurance company decided, hey, guess what? We're not going to cover you anymore.
That's crazy. In and
Oh,
of itself.
coincidence again.
Yeah.
Oh, and then one more coincidence. All of the blue trash cans didn't burn.
What?
Blue trash
No,
cans.
we're not doing that again.
Blue trash cans
No.
didn't catch on fire.
No.
real?
For real. There's pictures. There's a ton of pictures that have been popping up about
Hey,
that.
you know what else didn't burn? Did you happen to see the video of this? The cross and the bench up on the hill,
I didn't see that.
surrounded by torched everything,
Nice.
and it was 100% intact. I don't
Crazy.
know what the backstory of that is. That
That's
could have just
crazy.
been a weird little thing that happened.
Well, is the
But that was
cross
pretty
made
good.
out of wood?
Well, the cross looked like it was made out of metal, but the bench in front of it was absolutely wood.
See, and that's the other thing is happening that's very similar to the previous fires that we've talked about before. But I'm not going to mention the name of the place just for shadow banning reasons. One of the weird
Not
things
Samoa?
about that was that
Aloha.
the house is all burnt up and the car, even like the rims melted and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But the trees standing outside of the houses were like fine. Not fine, but not like
Charred?
Yeah, like they still had
Chored?
leaves.
Chored?
They still had leaves on them. And this was the same thing with this fire is that it like decimated the house. And then okay. My next question is, okay. The Malibu ones, like they literally are on the ocean. Why can't they just take ocean water and dump it? And then
have
people
enough
were
water.
saying
They don't have enough water.
they don't have enough ocean
Shut up.
water. But then they were
this is a
saying
good present.
they were saying that that most
They
of the
don't
reason
want to. They don't want to accidentally suck up
Sorry.
sea life.
They were saying that most of the reason that they don't dump seawater is because they don't want to do damage to the ecosystem in the ground and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so the houses that are on the beach, every time the wind blows, they get salt on their
It's
lawn.
supposed to be a heck of a time for a tsunami.
And then the second thing I was thinking was, okay, so would we rather have an entire community completely decimated or soil that's hard to grow grass for the next 5 years? Like, that is the dumbest excuse I've ever heard.
Just have
why do you
rock
hate the
lawns
environment?
like they do in Arizona?
And then, so this is the last thing I have to say. So there was a Canadian, and so they did have planes that were picking up seawater. So it's not like they weren't doing it.
Right.
They just weren't doing a whole lot of it. And then they had a seaplane that was picking up seawater that had to be sidelined because guess what it ran into when it was dropping salt
The Loch
water?
Ness Monster.
Drone.
Oh.
Ran into a drone. A drone hit
I
it.
actually did not hear that, so that was a guess, but it just...
Yeah, it hit a drone, and so it got sidelined. It couldn't be used anymore because it couldn't fly because it took damage from a drone.
Who's responsible for that?
They don't know.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. And this one, I don't even know if this was like a big drone or if this was like a little household drone that was trying to record fires, maybe. It could have been a news drone. It might have been a small one. But either way, let's fly a drone towards the plane. Or it could have been part of the people who were setting the fires might have been trying to prevent them from being able to put them out. That'd be a quick way to get them off subject, is just drive a drone that's like $100 drone into one of these planes and boom, they can no longer run.
Prediction. I want to make a prediction. So the people that set the fire, this might be a bit of a stretch and I will not be surprised if I'm wrong, but okay, so did you happen to see the whatever, I think it was like Academy Awards or whatever it was, but the gal like straight up mocking God in terms of like who was mentioned in shout outs for assisting in awards or whatever. It was a Hollywood thing. Straight up was like, God has zero shout outs or something like that. Like nobody cares. Like nobody's thanking God for that. This is going to get pinned on Christianity as being radical and trying to burn down Hollywood in the name of judgment from God.
I don't.
Well, now that you said it is.
Crap, I gave my ideas.
It's because you mentioned the cross, and then didn't the Hollywood sign get burnt up?
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
It
That
didn't?
was
you told me it did,
that was
Tanner.
that was AI. It was CGI and stuff. I don't think that's a good prediction. If they hadn't already arrested one person and had that other dude not been
Have they
popped up,
released any information about him yet?
they're a dissent that they won't because it doesn't fit the California narrative.
I see.
Okay. We'll talk about it after the show because I don't want to get shadow banned for it. And we'll maybe even mention it. You know what? This is a good time to plug the podcast or the Discord. We talk about the more controversial things that would get people podcast shadow banned on the Discord. So if you're interested in hearing what I'm referring to Phil, you can join the Discord and we will talk about it. But
even then, some of our dudes on there are kind of treading lightly in what they say and how they say it. It's not that we don't talk about it. We just are very careful to not get ourselves put on more lists than we need to.
I'm on
the
all
sake
the lists
of the Discord. Some of these lists you're not on, Phil.
I mean, like
some of the ones that, So anyway,
I'm not getting on those lists.
Same.
At this point, do we really trust whoever's making these lists to be that organized? Because,
fair point.
I mean, they're just they're auto lists. They're basically
it's all just a hot mess. So
they're set up so that when you mention it or you post it, that you automatically get put on a list.
Nah.
And then you're watched by the AI systems initially.
Oh, lovely.
Until you start to search, and that's where in the Discord we were talking a little bit about some of the search topics. Mm-hmm. If you search those specifically, you will actually be monitored by a person lists.
Wow.
And so,
man, government watch lists, not what they used to be. It's a shame.
I'm not getting the joke.
That's fine.
Okay. I was like, I'm confused.
You can cut that out. It's fine.
No, you're good. I just am not getting it.
It's just like, you used to be able to get, watched by an actual person. And now it's just AI.
Oh, yeah.
Either you were worth watching or
you used to be able to call into customer service and talk to a real person.
Randy Weaver would be
now it's a robot.
so upset.
For real. Well, that's the thing. I think that's the difference is the list that you get put on for searching some of the things that like a normal person would search for. That's all AI stuff. Then you I feel like you graduate. And then when you start looking up the things that like Courtney's looked up for
PhD.
a book. Yeah. When you start looking up for the things that like Courtney, out of the three of us, I guarantee.
I just had the graduation song by Vitamin C pop into my head when you said graduate. Like,
I do not remember that song. Oh, yeah. Gosh. Anyway, out of the three of us, this is the most ADHD episode yet. I love it.
It's amazing.
The editing is going to be amazing. Here for it. I'm going to have to, for real.
You're going to have to cut me a lot.
It's going to be fun to edit. That's all I say. But I guarantee out of the three of us, I can almost guarantee Courtney has a higher tier of watch list than us.
Because you're pulling up material for your...
For
your books.
Oh, yeah.
And the stuff that she looks at, even some of the stuff she talks to me about,
I've looked at official, released to the public, of course, but protocols for like how the National Guard operates and stuff like that, and the Insurrection Act, and probably all stuff that you're going to have to.
Oh, you've got a full-time watch list guy.
Well, okay.
I got probably. If any of us do, it's her.
He's now got his coffee, sitting back, listening to your devices.
He probably enjoys the podcast. He gets to listen to it multiple times, though. Yeah, because he has to listen to it live, like while we record it.
Right.
And then he has to listen to it again when Courtney listens to it again.
I also look up different wounds by different weaponry and just all the good stuff.
This is about the time that one of us gets a text like, "Shut up, stop blowing my cover."
Yeah, whatever agent is listening to us right now, I just want you to know that I love you.
I'm getting close to being done with my short
loves
story finally, so that might be out in public here soon. I hope
so. I'm looking forward to that.
More. I worked on it like all day today, so there goes Saturday, but well spent. I made some good progress. So.
Okay, so
what other updates do we have?
Yeah, I think that's it for updates. So
that's it.
Let's jump into the Shroud of Turin, which is the main topic for today.
The super special cloth, the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah, which I before this had like little to no knowledge of. So, I mean, like I had heard of it, but I'd always had like some big questions with it. Like, why is it called the Shroud of Turin if it's Jesus? You know, I know you guys have answers, but I'm just gonna say
I'm gonna throw this out here real quick. My mom has done a many-year deep dive on this thing, and it would be. I think we should at some point have her on because she also does science.
We could do a revisited, and like have fan input on it too.
All right, my brain
but
is
this will just open up the conversation. At least. That's fine.
My brain's like five steps behind.
That's okay. But I've always been like, why is it called the Shroud of Turin if it's of Jesus? How is there an imprint left on it that's like, I don't know, intelligible enough for it to be decided that that's what it is? How was it obtained? And I had just a few big questions like that where it was always like, what? I just, so that I never really understood it.
Science, history, archaeology.
But I watched, they covered it in part of an episode of Expedition Unknown, so all those questions I ended up getting answered at least, so.
Bada boom.
Okay. So, to answer your first question, why it's called the Shroud of Turin, is because it was housed when it became, like, popular, at the Catholic Church of Turin.
Yes, thank you.
But...
People don't know this.
So to kind of go...
I figured we'd start at the beginning and then, like, go through, but, like, you know.
So to even go back further and just kind of start kind of at the beginning.
Wow. Novel idea.
I feel like it would be best to kind of start, honestly, it was kind of even sharing a little bit about the climate of the area. So Jesus...
When Jesus was alive.
So Jesus lives and then dies, and the church is spreading. We get the New Testament books being written. They're getting copied. They're getting shared. Churches are getting planted. Missionaries, not missionaries, but the people of the Bible and people of the early church period are spreading the gospel. The Roman church the Roman government at that time was very anti-Christian, just horribly anti-Christian. And so there's persecution going on, and they're having to kind of, just kind of juggle this thing. And so the church begins to spread, and it starts to spread, spreads north. It's kind of spreading out of that region, and it begins to make its way into areas that aren't quite as persecuted and that kind of thing. Eventually, the Romans, the term we get, Roman Catholic, starts to transition over to a Catholic government kind of thing and all that kind of stuff. So as the political world continues, there's some interesting things like with so how they created the it's almost like a sanctuary, like a church almost, in where Jesus's house was. And then there's all kinds of crazy stories that go along that, but it's like, eventually the Catholic Church is kind of spread out going into Europe and all that stuff. And then there is this time period where all of the religions, even though they had their disagreements, so you see the rise of Islam happen, and then so you have your Jews who live in the region, you have your Christians who don't, then you have your Muslims who live further east, and then eventually they kind of take over. There's the Muslim expansion, they kind of take over the region, and there was this period of time where like Jerusalem was just kind of shared by everybody. It was kind of peaceful, it was good. Even though Christians didn't inhabit the area, we had so many Christian sites that were there that they were free to visit them. Then you see there's this group of warriors that are kind of from more into Asia. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but it's Seljuk, Seljuk, Turks. They come in and they start to the warriors do, and they convert to Islam, and then all of a sudden now there's tension, and so they begin to kind of set up perimeters, force Christians and Jews out, and begin to like conquer the region and not allow other people to go visit their holy sites. That creates a little bit of tension. And then from there, they decide, you know what? We've got power. Let's go ahead and start conquering other areas that are powerful and popular and whatever. So they began to expand. So they began to expand their region, conquering areas, taking over things. And then that's when you start seeing pushback. So then we talk about Christians always get such bad flack for the holy wars, for the crusades. And the reality is that it was kind of a pushback because for so long Christians could just freely go visit the sites, even though the region, had gone from Jewish to Christian to Islam to Christian. It had kind of gone back and forth, kind of just fluctuated. All of a sudden now we're no longer able to go see our holy sites that have been around for hundreds and hundreds since Jesus was there. And Jews even longer. All of a sudden we're not allowed to see those things, and they began to expand their area and begin to conquer through war. And so then the Christians begin to push back, and then you see that Europe basically
the way that they responded is basically fighting fire with fire, which is why it's so inflammatory, because it's like, you guys are Christians, you're supposed to be peaceful, right?
Right. But the irony is
inflammatory. Sorry,
I got fire and inflammatory. I got you.
Hey,
nice. I didn't even catch that.
That's good. That's good.
I'm losing it.
So so basically you kind of see this thing where there's issues going on within Catholic regions at this time, and it becomes an easy way to unite that region and to unite those people in something against somebody who is already beginning to expand.
Tribalism.
So, both that and as well as kind of a defense too.
Yeah.
In that, like, if all of a sudden, America starts to take over Canada and then they fight back, are we going to be like, oh my gosh, Canadians, you were supposed to be the nice people. Why are you fighting back? So it makes no sense to me why it's viewed so much as this Christian massacre, when the reality is that there was a lot more nuance to the situation.
Canada's a bad example. We're going to annex it.
Yeah, but we're not going to conquer it. We're just going to tell them they can be a state.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you know what all this, like the Middle East, like religious tension and everything is reminding me of? Just real quick. We had to take a standardized, like one of the big standardized tests in high school. And there was one essay question that was like, describe a major religious conflict in history between two religions or two different branches of the same religion and like the effects that it had. And I like blinked out and I was like, and I'm like sitting here like a new Christian. I'm like, I should know some of this, but I was just so terrible at history. I like BS'd something. Okay. But anyways, it has haunted me since. And I'm like, oh, I could have talked about Shiite and Sunni Muslims. I could have talked about, this and that. And, anything in the Middle East, anything in the Gaza Strip, anything like that. Yeah, no. So I think about that still. Anyways, go ahead.
Nice. Sorry, I was trying to keep my brain on the where I was at.
That's okay.
Okay. So then you start to see the pushback. You see the wars going on that are over there, and so you start to see religious artifacts in and out of different hands. Just they start moving a little bit from. You've got the forces that are there that don't really care about Christian artifacts necessarily. And then you've got the Christians who care a lot and they begin to pass around. And
it reminds me of the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament too.
Yeah.
When it's
very
like,
similar.
It's like they would capture it, like a different nation or a different tribe would capture it and then just keep it, even though they didn't believe in its power, but they just believed that having it gave them power over the Israelites.
And part of you almost has to wonder if they didn't sense that it did have power.
Yeah.
And I wonder if with things like...
But at the very least.
Right, and you makes you wonder if something like the Shroud, and we can get into, and I'd like to get into a little bit about relics and do they have power?
Yeah.
I know we've talked very briefly about them in past episodes, but I'd like to dig into that just a little bit because I have some scripture ready for it. But,
yeah, sounds good.
So then, your yawn sounds like a sneeze when you first breathe in. And
I thought he was gasping because he realized something and he really needed to mention
That's funny.
My dog didn't let me sleep last night.
Okay, dude.
Okay, so then in 1354...
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
The Shroud is... for lack of a better way to put it, discovered.
Yeah.
Discovered in the same way that,
uncovered.
That Columbus discovered America. Like it existed, but you know what I mean? So the Shroud was the first really like documented official count of the Shroud showing up is in 1354. And a knight had found it and was like, this looks important, and brings it back to France.
From Constantinople.
From Constantinople, yeah. Good catch. I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I was wondering, I was like, how is it in France? And then I was like, oh, it was in Constantinople, so that makes a lot more sense. Yep.
Yeah. So then from there, we see it kind of get denounced, and then we see it declared that it's a relic. Then we see it, and there's this thing that kind of happened during this period of time that absolutely infuriates me, okay? You guys know me, my plight that has existed against the Catholic Church, and recently I've come to love the Catholic Church in the sense of, like, I think it's important to recognize, like, the history of the Church. And there for a long time, there was the Catholic Orthodox Church, and then they split into Eastern Orthodox and then Roman Catholic. So really there was just two denominations for a long time. And so the history of the church is documented in those denominations. And so something begins to happen that, for me as a Christian, hurts my soul, in that big donors, and we see this even today in the church, and so it's not even just a Catholic thing, but big donors, they would give them certain artifacts or quote unquote relics as thank yous so to say.
Yeah.
Like even the arm of Saint Jude. Okay, so currently, and this just I'm just gonna go on a short caveat rabbit trail really quickly.
Tangent.
So the arm of Saint Jude, which is currently, I think, actually being brought around the United States as a relic by Father Martin from the Exorcist Files podcast.
I knew it. I was like, you've mentioned this before.
Yeah, so he goes through and he talks about how we know that the arm is actually the arm of St. Jude. So he's an apostle, and, you know, like, how do they know? Well, and he explains that when he was buried, because he was so predominant in the early church, that his grave was kind of elaborate. Well, and the country that was there, that was the governing force, were the Romans. The Romans were actually very superstitious with gravestones. They avoided them like the plague because they were so afraid of even slightly disturbing a gravestone, even just a gravestone, that they would get a ghost that would haunt them. So they were just
like, say,
terrified.
Getting rolled away and somebody coming back.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right. Don't want that happening again.
PTSD ran through bloodlines, man. They were scared.
And so for a long time, they have this just kind of fear and phobia of graves. So then eventually they go in so they can kind of testify that this gravesite wouldn't have been jacked up by the Romans. So then they go through early on in the 4th century and they create a basilica. So a big, nice grave for him. So they create this basilica, and this basilica can still be like excavated to today. And then they went through and then they excavated the basilica and created a bigger, nicer basilica. Okay. And then at some point, the Pope at the time decides, you know what? We have this donor, this family that gives a lot of money to the church. So we're going to give them an arm of St. Jude as a thank you. And so that is how we know that this is actually his arm, because it remained in that family's hold until recently, and so it's actually on lease.
Did they do fruit baskets back in the day or something? Like
meat and cheese trays,
So even thinking about like the arm of an apostle was given as a thank you for donating money to the church back then. You can imagine what the shroud became. So the shroud becomes literally one of those. Did
we even describe what the shroud is? Like a burial
maybe not.
shroud?
No. So the shroud. So I'm almost done with the history of it. So the shroud is basically given away as a donor item for a little while, and then eventually
the shroud or the arm.
The shroud. We're back to the shroud.
We're back to the shroud.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what I was saying.
It's getting the same treatment as the arm.
Yeah. If you can imagine that an arm of apostle got given to value dollar donors.
Which arm is it?
Imagine how much more arm? So
is that significant?
Oh my gosh.
Was it used to write letters?
If it was the arm of Moses, you could like hold him up and like
Dude, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to pull you off track. I genuinely want to know the answer to that question. Is the significance of the right or the left arm noteworthy here? I don't know. I have questions.
Tanner's giving us looks.
I didn't want you to get too far ahead before I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
I didn't mean to pull you off track.
No, you're good.
You wanted more energy from us. Now you've got energy. It's just not the energy you want.
No,
so
this energy is chaotic in the worst way possible.
I love it.
I'm having fun, but oh my gosh, is it bad?
Okay. So, if the arm of St. Jude got that kind of a treatment as, hey, we're giving this away to rich donors, imagine how much more so the Shroud of Turin would have. So then eventually, it's given away to a royal family, and then it gets damaged in a fire, and then it lands in Turin, Italy. And that is where it begins to get its recognition as being on display so that people can come and view
in
the shroud.
Turin's cathedral.
In Turin, Italy. Yep.
In the cathedral.
Yeah. In Turin, Italy. And so this was in 1578. So it begins to gain notoriety, and during this entire time it goes on to be explained and tried to be explained, and it's still, we can't fully explain what it actually is. But the rumor, or the theory, or the whatever is that it was the burial garments of Jesus. So it would have been what he was wrapped in.
Yes.
When he was buried and then rose again. So when the ladies come to the tomb and they find it empty and they see his burial garments,
bringing all the herbs and the stuff to prepare the body,
right? And they see his burial garments folded up, and the angel's like, "What are you guys doing here?" So the theory is that they grabbed the burial garments and then it got passed through time.
Yeah.
Now the question for most people is it authentic?
Right.
Is it actually the burial garment of Jesus? And I go back and forth on this quite a bit, but recently I've started to believe a little bit.
The short answer is, based on all of the scientific studies that have been done on it in recent history, as in like the last 20, 50, 100 years, it's very likely, just because of it's from that time period. That's pretty much confirmed at this point. Like, it's from the general era of Christ, and it would be very strange for it to be from anybody else, considering all of the things, that the properties of the garment.
Yeah.
Good short answer, and I will expand quite a bit on that.
Good. Perfect.
I have some
I
stuff
wanted
too.
to input something.
What's that? Go ahead.
One of the questions that I had was like, so how is there like a face imprint? So they know, it just seems weird to me. And something that I heard from this Expedition Unknown episode is that, so like when they're preparing the body and stuff, and then they lay the burial shroud and wrap the person in it, that it's actually covered in resin so that it adheres to the body and helps preserve it better. And so it is like basically putting on like a facial face mask. Like you put some resin on and then put like the fabric, and so it adheres to it, and so that's why it's more like a kind of like a, not like a cast, but you know what I mean. But then anyways, and so I'm like, oh, okay, that makes more sense, because if it was just down to like blood stains and stuff, like the blood stains aren't going to be like the perfect like picture of a face and everything in my head. So I'm like, but I know that there's also some more to that, and there's some more mystery to that, but I'll leave that for a little bit later. But that's one of the questions that I had with it. But learning a little bit more about the burial process and how it was authentic for the time period, and just everything, like all the different fibers and stuff that they can find on it, then it makes sense. So.
So I was listening to an interview of the lead scientist from the last time that the shroud was like fully examined, which was in the 80s.
In the 80s.
The head scientist actually is from his undergrad he got from Colorado State. Yeah. So I was like, ooh, so I perked up and I was listening. But anyway, so the head scientist, so he goes in and they kind of formulate this team, and they get this opportunity to investigate the shroud during the 80s. And the shroud isn't just permanently on display. They bring it out for viewing sessions, kind of like they kind of bring it out and put it away, just to kind of, I imagine, to preserve it. And so there was an opportunity for them to go over and actually investigate it in person. And so they set this big, huge thing up, and they shipped over all of this. He said it was like $700,000 worth of equipment overseas. They got their passports. They all went there. They landed, and they filled out the paperwork, did everything in order to investigate it. And
it's in the Vatican now, right? It's in the Vatican now, right? Did we mention that? I think that's what sticks in my head. I believe that's where it is.
I believe
don't
that's
think
where
we
it still
mentioned
is.
that.
Yeah,
So we're talking Italy.
because I think they're still pretty choosy. And,
Yeah.
like aren't letting anyone else do any.
Yeah.
Any.
Yeah, they're
It is not, according to this, it doesn't officially say where it is, but it was
Nice.
donated to the Catholic Church in 1983.
It's at the Vatican.
It was donated to the Catholic Church in Turin in 1890 or 1983.
It's in the Vatican.
Okay, so it might be in the Vatican. We don't know for sure. Okay, so they get there and basically their mindset is they want to go through the process of investigating this without there being a handicap tying it to the Catholic Church. They want to be able to investigate it freely with no oversight, no regulation, no conditional anything. They just want to be able to investigate it. And that was kind of their one big thing that they wanted to push. And while they were over there to investigate it, the Pope died. Then all of a sudden there comes this piece of paperwork and it basically says everything that all of the information, the scientific information they come out with has to be submitted to, and the Catholic Church has to be the ones who has it. And they were like, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be talked to you guys. And basically the guy straight up says that he kind of lied to the church and is like, yeah, everything's going to be taken care of. And so then they go to the regional cardinal who would be in charge of it. And that guy actually was upset because he was like, no, this should be a free, independent study. We don't need to have our hands in this. So then it gets approved and it gets pushed through. And then, so they have this opportunity. And so they get this opportunity to investigate it. So as they're investigating it, they put in, and the guy, the head guy, he's wanting to do the full gambit of investigation because he's like, there's a lot of dating styles that are contradictory to each other and kind of debate each other and argue with each other. Some are deemed more reliable, some are deemed less reliable, all this other stuff. And at the time, the person in charge was like, no, the only dating method you need to do, because the only one that matters is the radiocarbon dating. That's the
carbon 14.
Carbon dating.
Carbon 14. Dating.
And so he's like, that's the only dating that you need to do is the carbon dating. So they're like, God, like we really should do more dating. And they're like, no, the only one you need to do is the carbon dating. So they go through and they're investigating this thing and they're trying literally anything and everything to figure out what this thing could be. They're trying to replicate it through painting. They're trying to duplicate it through recreating situations where they're like laying down. They test the actual stained areas. They go through and molecularly test it. They anything and everything you can think about how they would have tested this thing, they tested it. And so they come to the conclusion, basically the entire science team comes to the conclusion, it is blood. It is human blood. And, when it was created, the only way it could have been created was as if it was being laid down very gently onto the cadaver or whatever. And then at that time, there would have been, and the way he kind of explained it was, there would have been some radioactive process that would have, that would have just kind of left its imprint on the shroud. And so he kind of comes to the conclusion. He basically says everything that they did pointed to this being authentic. But the one thing that hindered the problem was that the carbon dating said that it came back to between 1200 and 1370 AD. And so it wouldn't make sense based off of just the carbon dating for it to be that old. And he goes and he said, some people have argued that we tested a sample from when it burned and they tried to recreate it. And he said, I can tell you as the scientist who did this, unequivocally, no. I made sure to pick a spot that had no risk of being burned and repaired. And he said, I would have been able to spot that from a mile away. And the fact that you would even think that I would be dumb enough to take a spot from a repaired section shows how little you think we thought of this process. And he's like, I can tell by the fibers. And so we went through and we tested the fibers, and he's like, we can tell you exactly what it was made out of, and where that location of what it was made out of would have been Jerusalem.
Yeah, it was made out of flax. Yeah,
it was made out of flax, and it would have been
from Israel or the Lebanon area.
Yeah,
so like the western part of Syria.
Mm-hmm. And so it would have been from the right area, and he's literally, all of these tests, everything that they do, he's like, it points to it being authentic. And he's like, the only hindrance is the carbon dating. But he said, and now 50 years later, I can tell you that that he's like, the problem with carbon dating is that there is a lot of things that can interfere with that process. And he's like, one of the most common things that could hinder that process is the amount of contact that this thing has.
Yeah, the debris that's built up on it.
The people who've been handling it, the environment that it is stored in, all of these other things can affect it. And my thought process immediately goes to, okay, so the dating is from around the same era as when they would have found it, thought it to be Jesus's burial shroud, and then began to take care of it seriously. Prior to that, it would have been in the hands of Muslims who would not have cared. Wouldn't have cared enough to actually keep it safe, and most likely would have been handling it and passing it around. It could have made its way back and forth. And I feel like at that point going forward, all of a sudden people are going to take care while they hold it. Yeah. And so all of a sudden the carbon dating, now they're no longer handling it all the time. And that's when the carbon dating dates it too.
My source actually says, like, one of the claims of why it was dated to, I have 1260 to about 1390 AD.
Yeah, that's what it was.
But one of their things are one of their theories was like that date is accurate because that was around. That was right around in the time period when the Crusades were happening. And during the Crusades, there were soldiers, like Christian soldiers, Catholic soldiers, whatever, that were crucified the same way as Christ, because it was used as a threat if the Christians wanted to come and invade the Holy Land, of like, if you come here, you are going to be crucified and you are going to be like killed the same way that your Lord and your Savior was killed. Mm-hmm. And so if that burial shroud just kind of stuck around, like, then it would have made sense. And and then it was dated to around that time. That's just one of the things, because it kind of presented all angles of like, this is one of the possible things of why it would have been dated to that area. But I thought that was interesting. And
I wonder,
noteworthy.
as far as the dating thing too, as far as things you could interfere with that, just because the section that they tested wasn't visibly affected by the fire, I wonder if, like, just heat or ash, any other things that fire's chaotic, right? I wonder if that could have had an effect as well.
Right. And that's what this scientist seemed to think, no. That his biggest concern with it was the fact that the only dating they did was the carbon dating. Because his objection was he wanted to do other testing. And the church was like, no, carbon dating is the only one that matters. So that's the only one they allowed him to do. And so he comes out and he goes, so they asked him, is like, what are your thoughts? You're the one who investigated it. You're the one who did this stuff. And he straight up said, from my research, everything pointed to it being authentic. The only thing that didn't come back was the carbon dating. And in spite of that, even as a scientist, I believe science is what points us. He's like, the scientific method is you go through and you come up with a theory, and then you test that theory, and then you're actually testing the theory, not the principle, basically. And so he's like, even with that carbon dating coming back, pointing it to a different time period, from me, the flaws with the dating and the things that could have interfered with it, for me, are not enough to convince me otherwise that it is not authentic. And so he's like, unequivocally, with everything in my body, I believe that it is authentic. And then you take it a step further, and it goes into so if it is real, is it a relic? And I don't know what you guys think about what relics. Do you guys think relics are a thing?
I don't know.
In what
I sense we're
context, what
transitioning,
definition?
but
By what definition?
Well, obviously relics exist.
A relic with power?
I mean, how do you define it though? Because you think the Ark of the Covenant and like the tablets that the Ten Commandments were written on, Aaron's staff that budded, there was stuff that were put into the Ark of the Covenant that had at once possessed power and probably still did, and so yeah. But
I think if
know.
anything that remains today could possess power or have any sort of power, that would probably be a top contender for one of those items.
Let me ask you this. Do you think the arm of St. Jude has any power?
No.
Okay, so let me take you to a piece of scripture.
Please don't save any of my body parts when I'm gone.
2 Kings 13:21.
I found a picture of it. That thing's creepy. I don't like it.
I don't know.
2 Kings 13:21 says, once while some, and this is pre-Jesus, keep in mind, once while some Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a band of raiders, so they threw the man's body into Elisha's tomb. When the body touched Elisha's bones, the man came back to life and stood up on his feet. So if Elisha's bones could have power,
Why is that story not talked about more?
how much more power would a disciple of Jesus's have?
Okay, but like you
Was Jude a
you
brother
think-
of Jesus
you think,
too?
What?
4 of the disciples were brothers of Jesus. Was Jude one of them? I can't remember. I gotta look that. I should know this. My brain. It's too late at night. My brain isn't working.
James
Anyway,
was, of
continue.
course. Anyways,
James John. Anyway, continue.
I think Jude wasn't he?
What were you saying?
Like we're talking about relics, and so like I mentioned, like the Ten Commandments and the staff. So like, but we're talking exclusively about like body parts and people, like the bodies of holy people. So that's not something
Bones of
I
Elisha.
typically would have considered relics, you know, because to me relic
They're-
is like the same as like, oh, is it getting into borderline like idolatry, that kind of
Right.
stuff.
And-
And just human remains, just
I
considering what we
see
typically believe.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Burial versus cremation
Yeah.
shouldn't really matter, because no matter what, we're looking forward to our heavenly bodies.
Right.
And so
I get what you're
there's still
saying.
power in the bones. So I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but 2 Kings literally says the bones of Elisha.
and then I see.
I'm not arguing.
I know.
with you.
I see.
I know.
No,
I'm not-
I see.
I know you're not.
I see your
I
thought
know you're
process, Courtney, because you're thinking of an actual part of the person versus a thing that they touched or
Yeah,
had on
right.
it. But,
Something that
but
performed,
Think about
yeah.
the hem of Jesus' cloak.
Yeah,
the woman
that's
that
true.
touched the
But-
hem of his
The
cloak.
power
I mean,
came from Jesus through the cloak, but she touched the cloak.
Yeah.
And so the cloak had the ability from Jesus. And I do want to make a
I feel
note.
like it's different. Like I feel like I think about it differently when it's Jesus, though.
Well, what
know,
about
for
the
sure.
handkerchiefs? The handkerchiefs?
Handkerchiefs.
What about the handkerchiefs? What do you think about Peter's handkerchief? I healed people.
Yeah.
They passed him around. His shadow.
I mean-
Okay.
So
I mean,
now we don't even. It doesn't even need to
anointing
have.
oil, though.
It doesn't even need to have a physical.
Anointing oil, though.
It doesn't need to have a physical state. His shadow was healing people.
Shadow's a physical state. It's the absence of sunlight.
I say it's the
because
absence.
blocked.
It's the absence of a
Yeah, but that's
physical
a
state, which is anyway.
Shut up.
Bam.
Shut up. Handkerchiefs.
So now we go to one of kind of going back to part of the problem with relics is authenticity. How do you verify authenticity? Because then you go into the
Are we just talking about relics now? We're not talking about specifically Shroud of Turin anymore.
we're all encompassing.
Okay. 'Cause I had a few
but-
more things about this Shroud of Turin
Yeah,
specifically that
it's-
don't really relate to relics. So
We are all encompassing. We can circle back to it.
that's fine.
The wood from the true cross. You've heard of the
I've
true
heard that.
cross?
Yeah.
The true cross was supposedly found in
Because
when-
again, that would have had Jesus' actual blood on it.
yeah, and and so but again, we kind of go back to one of the problems with the church at that time was it would send out things as like thank you presents.
Yeah.
And the sheer amount of wood that was getting sent out from the Pope at the time, there's a joke that basically says the amount of wood that came from the true cross could build an ark.
Yeah.
Because so much. And so how much of that, and then the rebuttal of the Pope was that the true cross is kind of like how Jesus fed the people. You could take
Hey, stop reading my mind.
You could take so much wood away from it, but the cross is going to stay intact.
Dude, like the anointing oil that you got from that was flowing from the Bible.
Yeah,
it just kept coming.
But it was just like
mineral
oil. But it's so. Either way, that's in my mind, that's still a flaw. Like, why are we sending out this stuff? Like, allow it to just stay intact. So the authenticity is the issue. And so what Father Martins says on his podcast was they use relics in exorcisms, and he has a thread from the Shroud of Turin that he once used in an exorcism of a demon that claimed it was Satan. And when he brought out the shroud, didn't even tell him what it was, didn't do anything. And the dude who was being possessed straight up just lays down prone in the position that you would be laying in the shroud and began whimpering like he was like in pain.
Wow.
So he goes, so Father's like, for me, testability, like that shows me a level of authenticity. Now, going back to St. Jude's hand, it's touring all over the place. There's miracles, like documented miracles that come into play. And the host of the Exorcist Files, he brings up, what if it's not necessarily that the item has special abilities, but it just enters us into a level of worship and prostate and worshiping God. And we kind of, we believe that you can lay hands and pray for people. What is it in laying hands that's important?
It's the showing of the faith, right?
It's showing the faith. And then I think on another level, I think God is, I don't even remember where
obedience to the, not so much, I hate to say ritual, but that's kind of the thing, right? Like it's just a display of your belief in that and surrender to that, kind of like raising your hands in church or
like baptism,
like that.
Being baptized. It's the outward expression of the inward work.
Right.
Well, and I think. And I can't remember where I saw this posted, but somebody said God likes matter because he's the author. He created matter. So he likes when matter matters. And I thought in my head, I was like, there's no way to say this where it doesn't sound dumb. But
he's the dumb, creator. Just political. Because, guys, matters.
Oh, gotcha. It's...
My head hurts.
Matter, lives matter.
There's the cat.
Lives matter.
But
matter
anyway,
makes lives and it matters.
God created matter, and so therefore he cares about matter, so he likes that. And so would it make sense that he allows in his sovereignty, no matter how we look at it, whether we lay hands on somebody and pray for them and they're healed, or whether they show up because they drove 1,000 miles and they had the faith to believe that a sliver of the Shroud of Turin could heal them, it's still an act of worship in what they're doing. And so is it the relic that heals them or the act of the worship that heals them? And so one way or the other, it still worked. They were still healed. And so it makes you kind of wonder if there isn't a little something to it. Based off of just scripture alone, we have to come to the conclusion that there can be relics that have power just based off of 2 Kings alone.
Have you ever read The Sacred and the Profane? It was one of my required reading materials for comparative religions, and this is reminding me a lot of it.
Yeah,
of like the crossing over of like, the sacred and then like what's observable around us and like, anyways, I feel like I need to reread it in preparation for any further conversation about this. But which is not a Christian work, but it's just a perspective of like how different religions view the intangible, what is sacred, and then what is just profane, and it is not religious, but then there are some things in physical nature that hold that representation and are significant, and all that, like some religions worship nature and animal life, that kind of stuff. Anyways.
What else do you have on the shroud? You said you had a couple more things you want to...
Yeah, a couple things. Did you guys know that there's a theory out there that it was actually created by Da Vinci?
Yes, but I will say that the creator... or not the creator, the scientist, he assessed that specifically, and he came to the conclusion that he doesn't see how it could be created through like intentional creation.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite part of the Shroud story, and I'm so tired. I didn't even notice that you kind of glossed over it. Do you know the reason, or like part of the reason that there's been a lot of confusion? Like people were like, that doesn't really look like a face, or like the whole thing just kind of looks off, weird. Have you seen the negative of it? It's a negative. The shroud is a negative. It literally is, and that technology didn't exist during the time that they believed that it would have been created or drawn or whatever, however you want to designed.
Yeah.
And so, like, that also lends a massive amount of authenticity, in my mind, at least. Cut that, please. He's not going to. You're going to hear that.
Please put that at the start of the episode for like a few weeks.
Yes.
We need something that's not my noises, please. Anyways, but just to like flesh it out, since Tanner jumped in before I even finished it. Yeah. So,
that was me, actually.
No, it was Tanner, and then you jumped in on him. No, you're good. You're good, Phil. But they believe that it was created by Da Vinci because, I mean, wouldn't that about line up with the time period? When was Da Vinci alive? I guess I didn't look into that specifically.
Yeah, I feel like the time period would have lined up.
It'd be close.
But anyways, Da Vinci has a painting, Salvator Mundi, and the proportions of the face in that painting line up pretty much perfectly with the face that's imprinted on the shroud.
I've seen the comparison, the side to side, and frankly, any picture of Jesus that exists is going to line up with both that painting and the shroud in the same way.
Well, any of like that type of depiction, too,
right?
Because that's also why there's some skepticism. Is like, did Jesus really look like that? Like the long-haired, bearded, white European looking, that kind of like being in the Middle East, he would have looked different and stuff. But yeah, anyways.
And that's but that's the thing though, is I feel like based off of the shroud and based off of the sheer amount of people who've had visions of Jesus, there is this common theme of what he looked like. And he would have looked like a descendant of Jews today, the same kind of skin tone, a little bit olive skinned. And I feel like the creations I've seen of Jesus in that way match up with the shroud in the same way as Da Vinci's does. And so for me, I feel like it kind of goes back to did you guys listen to the I know Phil did with me, but I can't remember if you actually listened, Courtney, but the Billy versus Ham debate
or Wes Huff.
The Huff debate. Okay, so Billy, the sheer things allegedly that he says, he can spout all this stuff, but eventually there's going to be confirmation bias. You want to believe what he's saying because you don't like Christianity, therefore you're going to buy into it and be like, it is authentic. But then when someone like Huff comes along and is just like, not a chance, you can quick to be defending of Billy just because you have that confirmation bias until there's enough proof that shows otherwise. I feel like this isn't one of those situations where I think enough people who have determined this is not real have come up with so much stuff that they've kind of created this aura about it, the same way Billy does, of that this is not authentic. But for me, it kind of goes back to the lead scientist who at the time, ironically, basically disproved it. Their team disproved that this is not the Shroud of Turin, basically based off of the carbon dating. And the lead scientist is like, no, unequivocally, based off of everything that I did on that team, this is authentic. Whether or not it's Jesus, it is authentic from Jesus's period, from where he would have been. It makes more sense for it to be authentic. For me, I have to listen to him. He's almost the Huff in this situation. He's the expert. He's the one who was there. He's the one who did the tests, and he's the one saying this is authentic. For me, I can't go back and be like, well, but this random person said this. For me, he's kind of the Huff of this situation. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. My absolute favorite thing is when somebody tries to debunk, and it doesn't matter what it is, outside of Christianity, inside Christianity, it doesn't matter. When someone tries to debunk something, actually, science says it's this way. And then a scientist is like, No, actually the science says it's exactly what you're arguing it's not.
I was just wondering generally what's the fascination with saying like, oh no, Da Vinci actually made that, because I feel like I hear that a lot, and then I don't know, I haven't read the Da Vinci Code or anything like that, but like it's just like
Da Vinci fans are kind of like Tool fans.
I think
can't shut up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think because of how hard it would be to create, they go to Da Vinci because of his talent to say, here's somebody who could
a genius
have
in his day.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
That's my thought.
Okay,
process.
what was the thing that you mentioned earlier about the imprint being created by, like, did you say like
that there was
light?
there was radioactive
I
isotopes or something like that?
I heard that too, specifically from Expedition Unknown, and it said a burst of ultraviolet light or electromagnetic radiation.
Radiation.
I do not. What? I don't understand. Explain it to me.
So imagine like Jesus just goes, most irradiating, like, bright light.
That's it.
That is natural,
and it's actually measurable on the linen, on the flax.
Kind of goes back to, like I talked about, God is a God of matter, and I think that the reason why so much that He does, like when we talk about on this podcast about like, oh, well, the way that He separated, the people group wasn't just to create different languages, but maybe He literally separated the land, and that's how we get tectonic plate and all this other stuff. Okay, I think it's a God who loves His creation and loves matter, and so He works through matter. And I almost feel like the transfiguration of not transfiguration, that was a different situation.
That was a different.
But at that moment when Jesus is brought back to life and is just the fulfillment of glory, the fulfillment of everything. The one moment that proves that Christianity is the real religion, that all of it hinges on that one moment. The amount of energy that would have been created in my mind. Right. That would explain it.
Well, you think
and they obviously did not have the technology to create that themselves in order to make a forgery back in those days.
Not even in the 1300s.
Not even in the 1300s.
To go back to what you're saying about the energy and the material interaction of that, right? You flip back to on the front side of that when He's crucified, right? And you think about when His spirit passes, the whole earth tremble, right? By pretty much everybody's account, it was a very epic moment, regardless of who you were or what you thought about the situation. Like, it was significant. That was very plain. And
there was
so
an eclipse even.
Yeah, like everything in that whole moment was like, whoa, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so then, obviously not as many people saw it, zero. But when He came back, I have to imagine that was probably, even when He came the first time, right? Like, there was a star, there's a star above it. That's pretty wild. That's a visible, tangible thing. Like, all of everything every interaction that Jesus had on this earth was epic.
Jesus, when
and tangibly epic.
When John was in the womb and Jesus came into His presence, that John,
Mary with Jesus,
Jesus
in utero,
presence, in utero, that John
the Baptist
leapt for joy or whatever, in the womb. So His presence, even as a preborn baby, was significant enough that another preborn baby could feel His presence.
Yeah. And so then for Him to...
Yeah, that's good, Phil.
So then for Him to come back... Now, everything up to that point was naturally as a man, but to come back...
Other than the conception.
From conception up until death, everything was as a man, obviously blessed by God in many ways, having, more power, but then coming back, that's rather unnatural. So I also have to imagine
with victory
that might have
over death.
Yeah.
Not just like Lazarus came back.
That's a massive deal. And just based on the theme of how all of this has gone down to this point, I have to imagine that would be a pretty big deal that I feel like, despite not having an audience, that seems like it would have visible, tangible effects.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you, Courtney, I sent you a picture of the negative.
Yes.
Did you look at that?
I did.
That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. You can even see His arms.
Yep.
How they would have been positioned.
You see the lashes on the back?
Yep.
Yeah, and on his forehead too,
On his forehead.
where the thorns would have been.
And on his hands,
Yep.
too. His
It's
wrists.
on his hands.
dude, it's
That
That
wild.
was some of the other testing they did. Was they took where the wounds were and fake crucified volunteers in order to determine that you could be crucified in that fashion too during that time. So they did. If you could think of a test to determine that this thing was legit, that team did it.
I have one
basically,
more
is what he
thing on
said.
that you have not mentioned. So, in all of the analysis and stuff that they did, so in 1978, they actually, scientists actually analyzed photographs of the shroud, and they noticed they had just like a computerized analyzer or something like that of the photos or whatever. And they realized upon further examination that there had been something over the eyes
Yeah.
of the person
Yeah.
that looked like buttons or coins, which was very, very customary
this.
of the time. For Jewish, like in Jewish customs, they would put coins over the person's eyes to keep their eyes closed until they passed into the afterlife, so they didn't open their eyes too soon or something. It was just one of those beliefs, but they were actually able to look further into this, and this is from Expedition Unknown.
I've seen this on another source too. Yeah.
But it shows that the coins, because I guess they could see the imprinting and the actual minting of the coin, were pilot leptons, which were bronze coins that were only minted between the years 29 and 32 AD.
I remember that now. I had completely forgotten about that.
Yeah.
Good.
And
that
Good tidbit.
for me,
because it's like even if you kept one of those coins or two of those coins for 1,300 years and then made a fake, how would you
That's
track those?
wild
They were
dedication.
only printed during those few years.
right, and in 1300, even if you could recreate that and make it,
Yeah.
how would you know
There's
what
no
those? I
guarantee
don't know if they would have known, and
it was
maybe
gonna show up.
maybe
Yeah.
their history was better than I think their history would have been.
Yeah, but their tech wasn't.
In the Middle East in the 1300s, but I just feel like they wouldn't have known what that coin looked like,
Right.
let
I
alone
don't
what
know.
dates it was minted and all of that. Like,
But it is kind of an
their history
interesting
was
take.
decent, but yeah,
It is kind of a different take. I've never exactly thought of Jesus laying there in the tomb with coins over his eyes. So I mean, like,
Yeah.
that is kind of interesting. But
He wasn't
Yeah.
there though. His body
well,
was.
you know, yeah,
I know.
because he went,
Yeah, I know.
he went, and so yeah, I know. Anyways, that's all of my that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So many
'cause
noises.
the coins.
This episode.
And so, just to kind of
Wrap it up.
wrap it up. Whether you believe the shroud is real or not, I've always had this my gut feeling, even before I was even a Christian. I remember hearing about it when I was a kid. I remember my gut feeling even back then was that it was real. I don't know why. My gut has always told me it's real. But I haven't got any special revelation from God. God hasn't said, Tanner, the shroud is real. You know, like I don't know. It may or may not be real.
My faith ain't in the shroud.
Exactly. And I don't think it makes you less or more of a Christian to believe it's real or not. You're to believe it's real, you have faith that it's real. But I will say that I do, through doing the research on this, I have found that I got to give the Catholic Church at least a little more credit than I have in the past about their documentation of relics.
Oh, they're phenomenal at history.
It's phenomenal. They do a great job.
It's in
And-
Turin, by the way.
Huh?
Huh?
What'd you say?
It's in Turin. I
In
looked it
Turin.
up.
In Turin, the shroud
Oh, it's in Turin?
Yeah.
is currently in.
Oh, so you were wrong?
I was, in fact, incorrect.
I say I'm not even.
Would it be under the
I don't know.
authority of the Vatican? though?
Probably.
Yeah, it would be because
Well,
it's still
So-
because it was given to the
Yeah.
But for some reason, I had it in my head that it was and maybe it was at one point for a bit. Maybe
I'm
that's
sure
what
they probably did their own research on it. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But
I think it was at one point, but it's not
I can't
now.
even take credit for being right on that because I just straight up said I have no clue.
It's in Turin.
Yeah. It shouldn't affect your faith whether it's real or not. But it is fun. It is cool to think it's real. But yeah, kind of going back to, the Catholic Church does have a good documentation of, and I think that as Christians, even though I am not Catholic and I've got beef with the Catholic Church, I'm not going to lie. If you're Catholic, I love you. I'm not saying I don't, but I've had disagreements with theology. We'll just put it that way. But I have a new grown appreciation for the history of the church. And just as much as the Old Testament is important to understanding the New Testament, I do think that the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodoxy Church, they are important for us as modern day Protestants in recognizing the early church and recognizing and the impact that the early church should have on us even today. I think it's important. Yeah. And I do feel like Protestant denominations don't do a good job of teaching some of this stuff just because of the fact that it's Catholic and not Protestant. Yeah. And I do wish we would go more into that in our studies in church history, because we study early church history, but it's like as soon as it became the Catholic Church, all of a sudden Protestant denominations are like, all right, we're out. And I think it would be important. I think it's important for us to teach, to learn all of this stuff.
I also think that regardless of, like you said, it doesn't have any real world consequences as far as we're concerned, whether the shroud is real or fake. But I think that doing the deep dive and researching and trying to find out what you believe on it is a good practice in doing that type of research and finding out as much truth as you can, really digging in. And it's a fun one to do, right? Like it's one that's really easy to get caught up in and be like, oh, there's a lot of really cool history and a lot of research that people have already done. You just got to go do the reading and learn about it. And there are other things that do matter that you can apply those skills and those lessons to. So
right.
Go learn more. Find out facts we didn't mention.
Yeah. So
and then my mom will tell you.
I need to, so that the next time I get asked an essay question on a standardized test, I can actually,
so
file an answer.
So speaking of a standardized question,
I'm so bad at history, guys.
So speaking of a standardized question on a irrelevant test, is the Shroud of Turin authentic? Yes or no, Phil?
Oh,
yes.
Jeez.
What do you think, Courtney?
Oh,
it's okay to say that you don't know.
I don't know.
I
am scoffing at it a lot less than I did in the first place, but that was just because I didn't know much about it. So.
Yeah. So why were you scoffing?
Because it seemed improbable, and there were just a lot of gaps in like how and why, and
Okay, I hear you. I'm sorry I came on aggressive. That's a good answer.
No, that's okay. Your aggressive is not that bad. So
I lean yes. I think it's authentic. With that, as Phil said so eloquently, do your own research, look up stuff. We were talking about the cult stuff last week or 2 weeks ago. Last week. It's important. Doing your own research. It's important. Do your own research. And with that, we love you guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, do all of that stuff. You guys are amazing. We love you.
Spandardized handkerchiefs.
Spangardized.
Oh my gosh.
Muck ducks. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Muck duck.
In the ancient days of giants, when the earth was wild and free, a creature roamed the valleys, cloaked in mystery. Is he born of angels' blood and man, a Nephilim so tall, or a shadow of the fallen, yet he the maker's call? He's a biblically accurate Bigfoot, with a lineage from the skies. Not a myth or legend, but a truth that never dies. Is he a remnant of the Nephilim, a titan standing tall? Or does he have the word of God upon him, the last to hear the call?